like a ball. This is the accepted spherical trigonometry for curvature. And I think you all know what I mean here. So between the North Pole, let's say, and the equator, the Earth has to get through about 4,000 miles of curvature. With that, if you think you're at the top of the Earth, everyone's at the top of their sphere, because they are the observer. If you walk 1 mile, you'll experience 8 inches of curvature in the mainstream model. In 10 miles, you walk 10 miles, you'll experience 66 feet of curvature. In 100 miles, you'll experience 1.3 miles of curvature. It's not a slope, it's not 8 inches per mile, it's a curve, so it's squares. Now, myself and a lot of other people have been trying to look for this lesser spotted curvature. I mean, 66 feet in 10 miles should be quite easy to go and find. And it doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist. There are some people in the Flat Earth UK group on Facebook. They did a test between Worthing Pier and Brighton Pier, about 11 miles. Not even an inch of curvature existed. This is Dave Moore. Some of you might have heard of him. I think he went to Hungary. It's about 20 miles laser experiment, no curvature at all. Some people have sent up amateur balloons, amateur rockets to about 80 or 100,000 feet, no curvature again. Other people have been doing numbers. It just isn't there. It just is not there. And for us to be living on a ball, there has to be curvature. Now, I've shown some people some of this information and they still don't believe it because the mind can't grab it. They're like, no, no. They just say no. I'm like, well, you can't say no because it's not there. And they still can't make the jump to questioning curvature. It's very interesting how the human mind is reacting recently to this sort of information. Even the word horizon comes from horizontal. This is Tokyo. And even they do some PR stunts, like Red Bull. I think it was a couple of years ago, Red Bull did this famous space skydive, and the image on the right, when he was in his capsule, it showed a flat horizon out the window, and then when he went to jump, it showed this massive curvature that was too much for his altitude. And they do this using what's called a GoPro lens. It warps, it's like a fisheye, it warps the images within the field of view. So this Red Bull thing's just PR stunts. Also, they got their PR stunt wrong, because he landed just 6 miles away from where he took off. If he actually was in space, like they say he was, he would have landed hundreds of miles away, because the Earth's supposed to be spinning. So these things are just telling you to drink loads of toxic drink, and throw in some curvature. There's a lot of engineering as well, like in India, there's some really long train tracks. In Australia too, where the engineers haven't done anything to do with the curvature. This is a long bridge in LA, I think, and this has no curvature within the engineering. This is I was in Marbella recently, not far from where I live, and I was on the beach, and it was a very clear day near sunset, and I could see Africa. And I brought out my compass on my smartphone, I saw where it was going to. This is 85 miles away. Obviously, the mountains I could see were high, that adjusts the curvature maths, but you shouldn't be able to see it. It should be below the horizon. I've also done a test from Almeria, in southeast Spain, where I could see Algeria, and this should have been like 2-3 kilometers below the horizon. It shouldn't be there. And then people say, but I've seen ships disappear over the horizon. But with the new Nikon P900, when you zoom in, you can actually bring the boat back. So what's happening is the boat isn't going over the curvature, it's going out of your vanishing point. So the human eye has a vanishing point. So if you're at sea level, you have a vanishing point. The sea goes up, the sky goes down. The sea isn't going up and the ground isn't going down. It's to do with the human eye's vanishing point. If you raise your altitude 10, 20, 30, 40 meters, your vanishing point goes further. This is all to do with the human eye's perception and vanishing point. And these are things, if you're looking into flat Earth, you will have to study a little bit on that path. This is a lady I phoned up. She's a flight instructor, and I asked her if planes dip the nose down. Because on a spinning ball, an aeroplane should dip the nose down every few miles, or else it would just be increasing altitude. And she said to me, no, she's been teaching flying for decades. She said, no plane ever has to dip the nose down every few miles. And I said, that means you're a flat earther. And she got really, really insulting, and she got very triggered. And she said gravity magically does it. And I was like, okay. Also, gyroscopes on planes, they're not electric in any way, they're just like a hovering ball, a gyroscope. These also just show flat horizon all the way. Radar systems are interesting. The best ones on Earth at the moment cover around 300 miles radius, and these are just on a flat plane. To think of a radar curving around a ball, that's kind of odd, and that technology doesn't really exist. A radar just goes round. It just goes straight each direction. I don't know, put this in there. So someone's been sabotaging the laptop. Oh, I want someone to own up who's been putting these in there. Serious presentation. So what they did in the 1700s, they did what's called the Cavendish experiment. So the top left there, they hung 2 lead balls in a shed, and they said, therefore, spinning globes. And that's been debunked the past couple of years, really. If you go on YouTube, you'll see that heavily debunked. It's really an old PR stunt. Then in the 1800s, they did the Foucault's pendulum in Paris, and they invited all the newspapers there. Again, a big PR stunt. And because a pendulum's never a complete rest, they said, therefore, spinning globes. These are just PR stunts that are very easily debunkable. And of course, Newton, who never actually solved gravity, he wrote, a very big book and never really solved it. He said, an apple falls to the ground, therefore spinning globes. And this is massively profane. This is like to say an apple falls to the ground, therefore giant objects in a vacuum of outer space spin around. You can't, the jump's too big. And what they did 2 months ago now, they said they found gravitational waves. Now they never found the graviton. So gravity is a mental theory. That's not conspiracy. Gravity has always been a mental theory. But 2 months ago they did this big PR stunt. It was in all the world's newspapers, all the world's news, like the second item. And they said they found gravitational waves. And the only proof they had was this pig's nose. And that's all they had. And a lot of people, they found gravitational waves, and they just believe it. Because there are many people out there who believe the BBC, they believe Fox News, they believe all this stuff. I did a bit of research into this NSF, and it was like a secret government laboratory. They're not a sort of organisation where you can get a degree in Harvard and get a job for. It's a closed unit. So this was just a PR stunt from the government and the people in power. I also believe it was due to the increase in the Flat Earth movement, which has had about 20 million searches online in the past couple of years, that they started putting this out to counterbalance. If gravity was real, if gravity was real at the centre of the Earth, I believe there would be rock, there wouldn't be liquid. So that's kind of strange. And with these images, these are fed to us when we're very young. But the truth of the matter is, humans have only ever dug down 7 miles. We don't know what's below. This is just fairy tales and CGI. This is something I made a year or so ago. When we look at gravity, we sort of believe that this mythical force can hug, billions of tons of water to the Earth. It can hold a cargo ship upside down. But how come a dandelion can just gently let its leaves fly off? It's like, it doesn't make sense, it's not consistent. Someone once said to me, oh, it's because it's got less mass. I said, well, your baby's got less mass than you, but how come it's not floating around the room? So people don't really know what they're talking about. They bang out the words refraction, gravity, relativity, just like talismanic words. but they don't actually know what they're talking about. So what people say is if the ball is massive, it will have the exact opposite effect. Because we all know a spinning wet ball throws water off. But we've been conditioned to believe this mythical force of gravity keeps it sucked on. And bees never heard of it. The bees are okay. So gravity keeps ocean stuck to a ball, but it's weak enough to let the fish swim about. Not feeling it, bro. And, you know, people flying to Australia or across the equator actually believe in their subconscious that is happening, even though there's no instrument or no conscious direct experience of that occurring. When you go through all this research and you look at images like this, it becomes laughable. I wrote an article on gravity being a hoax, and I explained about density, and I went into depth about these sort of images, how they debunk gravity, and that article's had about 40,000 hits, and I've had a lot of emails about it, all agreeing. No one's emailed me and said, and proved me wrong. But what they do is they make out gravity is really complex. They say, oh, it's just so many equations that only the clever people can work that out. And you know, they've got these big equations on the blackboard and they say, therefore, spinning globes. But if you phone around universities and astrophysics departments, they actually don't know about gravity. They actually say, we don't know. It's unproven. And gravity is what they need for the whole spinning globes things to work. Because without gravity, it doesn't work. I don't know if that's Brian Cox there, he's getting high on some gravity.